Check out my greenhouse. This guy has 3,000 square feet of peppers, tomatoes, and several other plants. This footage was taken last October, 2024. I started with 100 pepper plants, most of which were Scorpion and Carolina Reapers. These are really spicy, and I would only touch them with gloves. It obviously didn't start like this. I'll show the progress pics at the end, but this image is from a couple of months prior. In addition to the hot peppers, I also had a couple of bell pepper plants. These tall guys to the left are Oxheart tomatoes. The largest tomato I weighed was 2.7 pounds. On the other side are white tomatoes, which are actually yellow inside and out. Here's one of my drip emitters. I have over 300 in this greenhouse. These allow me for automated watering. I can manually regulate the water flow with these PEX valves. In the submerged portion, you can see my water pressure tank, 2 horsepower pump, and an automated timer I can control from my phone. I also have an air intake fan below. The controls show me the temperature and humidity levels. I have a watermelon growing here. I had 4 to 5 big ones this season, but this really isn't the place to grow them. The submerged portion has a few unique plants. The bed has mostly strawberries, but also some exotic plants. Here's mulberry, Yupon tea. This is blueberry, I believe another blueberry plant. This guy's fig. Here is my passion fruit vine. That's red ginger, pink ginger, and this is a dwarf Cocopa banana plant. When I first started, this is how large the plants were, and this is late May 2024. Anyway, this is Arabica coffee, dwarf lime, dwarf lemon. I think this guy was avocado, but it didn't survive long. That's a dwarf orange. A few more strawberry plants. And this pomegranate guy, it didn't last long either. Most of these didn't survive the winter. Up here I have saffron. I planted 80 bulbs, and from each bulb came at least 1 flower with 3 stigmas. On the bottom right, where I don't get any direct sunlight, I planted wasabi and ginseng. Wasabi expanded, but the ginseng didn't do too well. Up here are my 14 water tanks. They're 250 gallons each, and that all leads into my water pump. Let's look at the initial concept. Like all my projects, I start with a few sketches. Here are 2 ideas married together, a Wallapini and a greenhouse. This allows me to take advantage of geothermal heat, but also southern light. Shout out to Redgate Farms for their video on Wallapinis. I was inspired by this concept, as well as several Amish greenhouses that dot rural Ohio. Here are my planting beds spaced out to allow for small, mechanized equipment. After doodling, I take my design to AutoCAD, where I first draw, then model out the concept. You can see the different planting zones. At grade, below grade, and some areas which are shaded, meaning the sunlight would never reach there. My Achilles heel was the open space at the end. More on this in a future video. For the construction, I started with expanding an existing clearing. I used an excavator to dig out a pit. We placed strip foundations. In the center, I made place for both air intake and a drain pipe. You can see them popping out of the ground there. We had 9 courses of block and then a bond beam on top. We tied the bond beam into additional footings for stability. That's the concrete completed. We then got our steel pipes in to hold up the greenhouse trusses, and those trusses span 30 feet. We flattened the ground above. There's a slight slope towards the pit. Our crew added all the required bracing. Once we got the plastic on top, it felt much better inside. Here's our submerged portion. We built a stairway to lead us down here. This was a fun episode, getting stuck in the trench. We sealed the sides and tied down the edges. I added a 4-inch drain pipe on the edges so the water doesn't stagnate. On the north side, which will never receive sunlight, we built a structure to house my water tanks. That's 14 tanks, 250 gallons each. That first year, we experimented with a few beds. I planted garlic and connected this to an elevated tank. This will come down at the end of 2023. In the beds, I planted mostly cherry tomatoes, but also peppers, and I experimented with watermelons, fenugreek, and squash. They tasted as good as they look. There's some of the harvest. I used no fertilizer. I should have used calcium, but I didn't know about it at the time. I spent the fall of 2023 building the beds for the submerged portion. The back wall was still open at this time. All the wood was treated. I placed landscaping fabric between the soil and the wood. The ramp helped me bring down compost. In January of 2024, I decided to redo the beds to match my initial design. I used several 2x12s on gravel. There's compost placed in there. I eventually mixed this with vermiculite. Disaster again, it just took one branch to cause all this damage. Anyway, we got it fixed. This time with this, we have a small blower fan between the sheets of plastic. The side walls automatically raise and lower based on temperature. Now with the greenhouse fixed and sealed, we can start planting. Here's 100 tomatoes and 100 peppers. I should have diversified this group and introduced more companion plants. The tanks were being fed by well water. The water tanks are placed to receive sunlight in the winter, but stay mostly shaded in the summer. The intention was to harvest rainwater, but I didn't get this far yet. There's a dragonfly. Here are tiny versions of the same plants I showed in the beginning. I want to say this is around the May-June timeframe. Finally, I want to leave you with the serene atmosphere. I understand we're missing a lot of details in this video. I'd love to share my thoughts and love to hear yours. If you'd like more information or if you have any pointers you'd like to share, feel free to reach out. Thanks to everyone who helped me in the building and maintenance of this greenhouse.